Hi everyone, okay, welcome to my channel, and here I am continuing my series on directors' first films. This is quite a long series. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for you to chip in with any films that you may have in your collection, because I am only showing ones which I have in my collection. But here we go with The Seas. Hopefully you saw part one. If you haven't, check it out. Here we go. First up, we've got a female director born in New Zealand, and she won an Academy Award for her directing in 2024 for The Power of the Dog. Yes, it's Jane Campion, and her first film in 1989 was Sweetie, and she really came to public attention in 1993 when she both directed and won the Oscar-winning screenplay for The Piano. And she's also directed the rather controversial In the Cut, starring Meg Ryan. Next we go to 1974, and a film that was originally intended as a student film, but it got expanded by recommendations of the producer and released as a theatrical cut, and this was for John Carpenter's Dark Star, 1974. John Carpenter then went on to do Halloween in 1978, and other great classics, including The Thing, one of mine and many people's all-time favourites, The Fog, In the Mouth of Madness, They Live, etc. Great director. Director Steve Carr started in music videos before getting the chance to direct the sequel to the hit movie Friday, and he directed Next Friday, his first film, before going on to do such terrible movies as Dr. Dolittle 2, Paul Blart Mall Cop, which is a cult favourite, and Daddy Daycare. Director John Cassavetes, well, he was an actor as well, known in films such as Rosemary's Baby and Mikey and Nicky, but a director, yes, and it was actually in 1958 when he directed his first movie, which was Shadows. He also went on to get an Oscar nomination for his directing of A Woman Under the Influence, starring Gena Rowlands. Okay, I'm going to do a slight cheat with this next one. I'm going to talk about Gilbert Cates, a director whose first movie was in 1966 called Rings Around the World, and it starred Don Amici. But as far as I know, that film is not available on physical media anywhere. So I'm just going to jump to his next film because it's a very significant one. In 1970, Gilbert Cates directed I Never Sang for My Father, and this one landed Oscar nominations for both Melvyn Douglas and Gene Hackman for acting roles. So yeah, significant start for Gilbert Cates. Now a British director, and we're going to 1997 for this hugely successful comedy, which was The Full Monty, directed by Peter Cattaneo. So yeah, his first film as a director, and it actually got him a director Oscar nomination. He went on to do other movies such as The Rocker with Rainn Wilson, Military Wives, and just recently in 2024, The Penguin Lessons with Steve Coogan. Director Gurinder Chadha was born in Kenya but grew up in London, and it was her first film in 1993, which was Baji on the Beach. But perhaps she's best known for doing, later on in her career, Bend It Like Beckham, starring Keira Knightley, and then also later on Bride and Prejudice and Blinded by the Light, about the Asian kid who is inspired by Bruce Springsteen. After directing a number of short films, director Anish Changanti came to the scene in 2018 with a really interesting thriller, Searching, which involved quite a lot of social media. So I think this one will be somewhat of a classic in years to come, looking back at how we used social media during these times. A follow-up film was called Run, starring Sarah Paulson, which I must admit I wasn't so keen on. So yeah, looking forward to seeing more of what Anish Changanti can do, but this was a good start. Michael Chapman is arguably best known for being a cinematographer. He worked with Scorsese on movies such as The Last Waltz, Taxi Driver, and Raging Bull, as well as Paul Schrader's Hardcore and Philip Kaufman's classic Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 1978. But he did also try directing as well, and in 1983 he directed a young Tom Cruise in All the Right Moves. And he also directed the Daryl Hannah movie Clan of the Cave Bear. Director Michael Chavez has so far been directing horror movies that have been getting a mixed reception. His first one was in 2019, and it was The Curse of La Llorona. I didn't mind this, to be honest, but yeah, certainly not a great movie. And then he's also directed The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and The Nun 2. Born in Canada, director Jeremiah Chechik. He had his first director's film in 1989, and it was National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. He mainly works in TV nowadays, but following this movie, he did do the Johnny Depp movie Benny and June, and then he also directed the Sharon Stone remake of the classic Diabolique. British director Peter Chelsam's first film from 1991 is one that I really enjoy, and it's called Hear My Song, with Adrian Dunbar as a concert promoter down on his luck, but trying to get a superstar tenor played by Ned Beatty, no less, to come out of retirement and play at his club. There's Ned Beatty there, fantastic role for him. But yeah, this is a really lovely film, Hear My Song. Peter Chelsham also went on to direct Funny Bones with Lee Evans and Jerry Lewis, and also Hector and His Search for Happiness, starring Simon Pegg. Director Michael Cimino's first film is one that I still really love. From 1974, it is Clint Eastwood and Jeff Bridges in Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. Cimino's very next movie was the Oscar-winning The Deer Hunter, and then, after that, he bankrupted a studio when he went massively over budget by directing Heaven's Gate. Director Larry Clark definitely got off to a controversial start with his 1995 film debut, which was Kids, a film that looked at teenage life in America, with kids getting into all kinds of activities that you really wouldn't want your kids getting into. But yeah, an impressive film debut. Larry Clark has also directed films such as Another Day in Paradise, starring James Woods, and Bully, starring Brad Renfro. Producer and director Jack Clayton perhaps doesn't have too many films to his directing credit, but the ones he does have are absolute classics, and he got off to an absolutely brilliant start with this one, Room at the Top, in 1958. It got him an Oscar nomination for his directing. This one starring Simone Signoret and Lawrence Harvey. Absolutely brilliant. His next film was absolutely brilliant as well. It was The Innocents, starring Deborah Kerr, and then he's also gone on to direct other movies such as The Pumpkin Eater, the Robert Redford version of The Great Gatsby in 1974, and the wonderfully eerie Something Wicked This Way Comes in 1983. Graham Clifford's first movie as a director got Oscar nominations for both Jessica Lange and Kim Stanley, and it was in this film version of Frances, telling the tragic story of actress Frances Farmer. Now, Graham Clifford also directed another film, and I think I'm probably the only person that's got it, which was Burke and Wills in 1985, and he also directed Gleaming the Cube, starring Christian Slater. But possibly beyond his directing, he's best known as an editor, because he edited the classic Nicholas Roeg films Don't Look Now and The Man Who Fell to Earth, as well as editing the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Actor George Clooney, he's currently having Broadway success with a Broadway adaptation of Good Night and Good Luck, which he actually directed as a film in 2005. But actually his first film as a director was 3 years before that, in 2002, with a great role here for Sam Rockwell. And this was based on the autobiography of Chuck Barris, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Films that George Clooney has directed in more recent years haven't really set the box office alight. They include The Tender Bar, The Monuments Men, and more recently The Boys in the Boat. Ben Coccio, perhaps he's best known for being the screenwriter on the Ryan Gosling film The Place Beyond the Pines. But as a director, his first film was in 2002, and it was this film Zero Day, about kids planning a high school massacre. They may work separately nowadays, but 1984, the Coen brothers got off to an absolutely fantastic start. Joel and Ethan Coen doing Blood Simple, absolutely brilliant film with Emmett Walsh there, and also starring Frances McDormand. The Coen brothers obviously famous also for doing such classics as Raising Arizona, The Big Lebowski, and No Country for Old Men. Jaume Collet-Serra was born in Spain and then came to LA, where he's carved out quite a successful career as a Hollywood director, his first one being the remake of House of Wax, but he's gone on to do various films with Liam Neeson, including The Commuter, as well as films with The Rock, such as Jungle Cruise and Black Adam. He directed Blake Lively in The Shallows, and can you believe he's actually in the process at the moment of doing post-production on a remake of the Sylvester Stallone film Cliffhanger. Chris Columbus, hugely successful as a producer as well as a director. It was in 1987 that he directed Elizabeth Shue in Adventures in Babysitting, before going on to do such family-friendly classics as Home Alone, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Up next, he has coming the adaptation of Richard Osman's The Thursday Night Murder Club. Barry Cook. Now, he's mostly known as an effects animator for films such as the classic Tron, as well as Captain EO starring Michael Jackson, and also films such as Beauty and the Beast, The Rescuers Down Under, The Little Mermaid, and Aladdin. But he has actually had a directing credit as well, and that was for the 1998 animated version of Mulan. Animation again, and Josh Cooley. Now, he's worked around animation in various capacities: art department, writer, voice actor, but in terms of directing, his debut was with Toy Story 4, and the only other film that he has so far got a directing credit for is 2024's Transformers 1. Martha Coolidge mainly works in TV nowadays, but she got off to a start in 1983 with a classic bit of Nicolas Cage in Valley Girl. And she also directed Val Kilmer in 1985's Real Genius, as well as Laura Dern in Rambling Rose. Actor Bradley Cooper has definitely got off to a good start with his directing career, because both of his films that he's done so far have received Academy Award nominations for Best Picture. So his first one being the remake of A Star Is Born alongside Lady Gaga, and he then made Maestro. Currently in the works, he has a comedy, where he will direct as well as star in a film called Is This Thing On, alongside Will Arnett and Laura Dern. Another director who got Academy Award attention with his very first movie is Scott Cooper, who directed Jeff Bridges to an Oscar in Crazy Heart, which also won an Oscar for Best Song as well. And Scott Cooper has worked with Christian Bale a few times on movies such as Out of the Furnace, Hostiles and The Pale Blue Eye. And up next, he's directing a movie, Deliver Me From Nowhere, which is about the making of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska album. Francis Ford Coppola, absolutely one of the most fascinating directors of the last 50 years. Now, he didn't really get off to a great start, to be honest, with his 1963 film Dementia 13, which I have here on this Horror Classics set, although I wouldn't say it was a classic. You could probably forget about it, but absolutely you cannot forget about his incredible career, which includes the Godfather trilogy, The Conversation, Apocalypse Now, and I really love One from the Heart as well. I wish more people would enjoy that one. But yeah, Francis Ford Coppola, classic director. She may have been given grief for her acting in The Godfather Part 3, but definitely Sofia Coppola has worked through that and gone on to be a real director with purpose. And her first film in 1999, The Virgin Suicide, starring Kirsten Dunst, quite a classic. Absolutely her follow-up movie, Lost in Translation, I really adore that movie. And she's had some really interesting ones throughout her career, including a quite unusual remake of The Beguiled, and more recently, a really engaging drama about Priscilla Presley, Priscilla, starring Kaylee Spaney. Anton Corbijn has spent a lot of his career working with Depeche Mode on music videos and photography for them, as well as other musicians. But in 2007, he directed this excellent film, Control, about Ian Curtis, the lead singer of Joy Division. And he's also directed a couple of other stylish ones, The American, starring George Clooney, and the John le Carré spy thriller, A Most Wanted Man. British director Henry Cornelius, he passed away in 1958, only 5 films to his name, but he started off with Ealing Studios, and that was in directing this one, Passport to Pimlico, and he was also responsible for directing the classic film Genevieve. I did a video on that one just recently. Australian John Cornell, he was a producer of Paul Hogan's TV show, and he was also a producer of the very first Crocodile Dundee film, but he actually became the director of Crocodile Dundee 2, and he also worked as a director with Paul Hogan once more in Almost an Angel. Actor Kevin Costner really went for an epic statement when he directed his first film in 1990, and of course it was the classic Dances with Wolves, which won an Academy Award for Best Picture as well as an Academy Award for Best Director for him. Since then he's directed The Postman, Open Range, really good western, and then currently Will We Ever Get all of the Horizon and American Saga series. So 2 have been shot already. Hopefully we'll get all 4 of them. I'll just show you this Laserdisc of Dances with Wolves. It's a really nice gatefold edition. He was a playwright, a writer, an actor, composer, the plum-voiced Noel Coward. He had 1 directing credit to his name, and that was directing alongside David Lean, who he had a prolific relationship with, and that was the 1942 film In Which We Serve, and he won an Academy Award nomination for his screenplay. As a horror director, Wes Craven really reached commercial success with A Nightmare on Elm Street and all of the Scream movies, but it was in 1972 when he directed The Last House on the Left, his first movie, and then he did The Hills Have Eyes just after that. Michael Crichton, definitely a big name as a writer. He's written Jurassic Park and Twister, but as a writer-director, he's also had some really interesting ones. His first one being Westworld in 1973, starring Yul Brynner and Richard Benjamin, really enjoyable, and definitely his 70s and 80s period as a writer-director have been some fun movies. They include the likes of Coma, The Great Train Robbery, Looker, and a really fun one with Tom Selleck, Runaway, in 1984. Music has always been an important part of his career, and for his very first film in 1989, director Cameron Crowe had Peter Gabriel's In Your Eyes coming out of the cassette player here, as John Cusack holds it. Fun movie. He went on to direct the grungy Singles, as well as the absolutely fantastic Almost Famous, as well as a couple with Tom Cruise, which have included Vanilla Sky and the classic Show Me the Money, Jerry Maguire. Director John Crowley, he got off to an interesting start in 2003 with a very starry cast, which includes Cillian Murphy and Colin Farrell in Intermission. Good movie this. He followed up with a movie directing Andrew Garfield in Boy A, and he worked with Andrew Garfield again just recently in the one starring Florence Pugh as well, We Live in Time, and he also directed an absolutely wonderful film with Saoirse Ronan, Brooklyn. Alan Cumming, he's an actor who's had an acting career that's been going on since the 80s. He's done a huge amount of things, including playing Nightcrawler in the X-Men movies. But yeah, in 2001, he had a co-directing credit alongside Jennifer Jason Leigh, and they're both pictured here, for this movie, The Anniversary Party. Richard Curtis, best known as a writer really, worked on TV on things such as Blackadder and Mr. Bean, and he also had the Oscar-winning script for Four Weddings and a Funeral, one of my all-time favourite comedies. But in 2003 he also directed, for his first director debut, Love Actually, which is a lot of people's Christmas favourite, and he also directed in 2013 the charming About Time. Okay, that's it for the C's. How did you get on with that lot? And now, as I said before, I'm just showing you what's in my actual collection. So there are gaps here, and there's lots of opportunity for you to chip in with comments about which movies you may have in your collection, which I don't, or maybe I've just forgotten to mention it. So let me know in the comments what you think, and please do join me again for the continuation of this series, quite a comprehensive series of looking at directors' first films. I hope you're enjoying it. Thanks very much for watching. All the best to you. Bye.